Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Be last summer. Be unpaid intern at NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, doing grunt work. Be carrying construction materials, wood and metal, down to the basement on the bottom floor for the first time with another intern. Use keys to get through double doors, flick on lights. Fluorescent bulbs overhead take a solid 20 seconds to flicker to life. The basement is lined with old e-bits, lasers, etc. from the 60s and 70s, basically used as storage for old shit that they did not want to get rid of. I say, "Damn, it smells dusty in here." I tell the other intern, let us call him K. He says, "Yeah, let's just put this shit in the back room." Push a cart with materials to the back of the big basement. Most rooms connected to the large central room have various old machines in them. Finally get to the far back corner of the basement. Struggle to open a narrow wooden door that looks older than anything else in the basement and other rooms. Finally open it and flick on the single overhead bulb to find a small stone room, maybe 5 feet by 5 feet, with a very narrow stone corridor connected to it, 2 or 3 feet wide and about 12 feet high, going back further. A single wire overhead goes from the bulb above us down the narrow corridor and around the sharp 90-degree angle that the corridor cuts roughly 50 to 60 feet away from where we were. Kay and I stacked the wood and metal up against the side of the wall in the small rectangular entryway. Once we are done, we are about to head back, when I ask, "Kay, do you know what is down that way?" Pointing down the narrow corridor. He answers, "No idea. They never told me." I reply, "Only one way to find out," brushing the grime and dust off of my hands and squeezing into the narrow corridor. Kay says, "Anon, come on, don't go back there." I reply, "Don't be such a wuss, Kay," as he reluctantly begins to follow me. Come to the corner and peer my head around the side. See the narrow corridor and overhead wire continue up to a single white door, sort of like in the original pic related, with the numbers 436 painted, maybe spray painted, across it, and nothing else. No windows, no handle, no hinges, just 436. Another single small bulb hangs above the door, and from my distance, I see a particular object hanging out behind the bulb. Kay asks, "What is it?" trying to push his head around the corner. I answer plainly as I turn the corner and approach the door. A door. I say, "This is weird though." The glare of the bulb begins to dim, as I see that a single black sphere is protruding from the stone wall, maybe 2 to 3 inches in diameter, directly above the door, maybe a foot to a foot and a half above. The sphere is glossy, jet black, and it does not look like one of those video cameras in the mall. Kay asks, "Is that a camera?" freaking out a bit as his voice echoes down through the corridor. I whisper loudly, "Shit, Kay, chill the fuck out." I say, "It is not a camera. It looks like a rock or stone of some sort." I stare at it for a moment and feel the hairs on the back of my neck stick up. I feel like I am being watched. Kay asks, "Is there a way to open it, Anon?" Cautiously approach the door and feel the cold metal door as I search for a way to open it. Kay says, "Try pushing, Anon." Does not budge an inch. Kay says, "Let me get on your back, Anon." He says, "I want to check out that black thingy." The sphere was maybe 10 feet off of the ground. Use the narrow stone walls as support and lift Kay onto my shoulders. He is reaching for the black sphere when I suddenly hear a whispering wind. I think, "Oh shit, .jpg. He asks, "What the fuck is that, Anon?" I ask, "A draft." Kay replies, "We close the door behind us." As the wind gets gradually louder, Kay says frantically, "Let me down, Anon." I say, just touch the sphere, Kay. I pushed his body closer further up as he was trying to lower his center of gravity. He says, it's getting closer, Anon. Let me down. I twisted my neck to see him almost touch the black sphere. When the metal door flies open loud as hell and knocks into me, Kay goes flying. I think his feet hit the ceiling. My head and arms hit the walls as I fall. And the whispering wind has become an overpowering, howling gale coming from the open door. Within my fear and shock, I see only pitch darkness on the other side of the metal door. Frantically get to my feet and run like a retard back the way I came. Jump over Kay, accidentally step on his hand in the process. He shouts, "Fuck, Anon, help!" I shout, "Get up, Kay!" Run around the corner and back towards the basement. I feel the wind screaming and pushing at me as I frantically run. He shouts, "Fuck! It's chasing me!" Run through the basement, through the double doors and back to the bottom floor. I was not sure when I stopped feeling the wind. Suddenly turn around and think, oh shit, Kay. Run back to the basement and find Kay out of breath has shut the narrow wooden door to the far back stone room. Cannot hear the wind at all. His head is bleeding a little bit. I say, shit, Kay, what the fuck was that? He says, fuck you, Anon, that was all your idea. He is on the verge of tears. Eventually get back to work. Agree not to tell any of the other interns. Go back later that day before we leave for the day and find that the door is now firmly shut, with no black sphere above it. We never go into the far back room where we put the construction materials after that day. Make other grunt interns move stuff to and from there instead.
Be me, security guard. Get an alarm call. Motion in the basement of a haunted house of an old man. It is always the same call. Partner is busy locking up banks, so I go alone. The place is off the highway, kind of nowhere but not far. Park at some train tracks behind a gate. Get out and walk through the 5-foot-tall grass 200 meters into the woods. The house looks ghetto as hell, dirty and covered in spider webs. The front porch is missing. I hear a thumping of something running off into the woods. Deer, bear, clown. Enter the house and disarm. Everything inside is like an untouched time capsule. Everything is like 20+ years old, some older. Like you are visiting your dead grandparents' house. Despite the outside being so dirty, everything inside is relatively clean. Yet no one has lived here for at least 30 years. Walk around, finally find the basement. It has those stairs. If it were a horror movie, something would grab your ankles. Nothing really down here except an almost blood-like stain on the concrete, and 2 vintage porcelain dolls in a storage room, leaning against a wall. I am leaving. All clear. No cause found. As I leave, the screen door rattles for no reason. I did introduce myself and compliment the spirit if it is real. So maybe that is why I am still alive. Other people have been locked in the basement and heard whistling. I suppose mine is lame.
Haunted house of an old man. Does he still live there or just own the property? Other people have been locked in the basement. Explain further. How?
As far as I know, this old house is haunted by an old man whose spirit comes mainly from the basement. We always get the same motion alarm from the basement too. I don't know who he is, or his story. Thinking about it, I don't know how we even know if it's an old man. I don't think anyone has seen an apparition. As for being locked in the basement, after entering the basement, the driver said the door shut itself behind him and wouldn't open on the first try. It did the second try. This same guy claimed to also see a shadow person at another old local building. The other interesting thing, though, is the whistling, because the alarm company's call center worker also heard it over the phone. I don't know who, though. This is the only interesting story I have.
Be in the last semester of nursing school, working 2 jobs on top of it, saving up for an engagement ring. So my normal schedule was school from 7 to 1600, job at the video store 1600 to 2100. Then as a nurse intern in the ER 2100 to 3, living with mom to help save money. Mom and her family live deep in the South Georgia swamp. and it is miles of back road getting there with very little lighting other than your headlights. And at night, there is always a fog. There's a stretch of that road that is exactly a quarter-mile long, flat and straight, between an old stop sign that everyone ignores and the creek bridge. I'd just gotten off and was heading home on that stretch of road. Ahead at the bridge, I see the ass end of an old Camaro with its tail lights on, and exhaust coming out of the pipes, and a police car on the shoulder with its roof light going. As I'm approaching, I get a severe anxiety feeling in the pit of my stomach that I just chalk up to exhaustion and the adrenaline of my shift at the ER. I cannot shake the feeling that something is wrong. And now the hairs on my arms and back of my neck stand up. I realize what looked wrong as I get closer. The cop car looks straight out of Starsky and Hutch. Old sedan with a single dome light on the roof. The wannabe lifesaver in me decides that I'm going to get across the bridge, about 10-yard bridge, and pull over and see what is going on. As I get to the cars, I see that there are 0 people. No cop, no injured driver, no one. I can even smell the exhaust. Car guys will know what I'm talking about when I say that pre-emissions exhaust has a different smell than modern car exhaust. I get to the other side of the bridge and look into my rearview mirror, and there is absolutely nothing behind me. No car lights, no cars, just fog, and the urge to tactically dump my bodily waste storage and get the fuck out of there. I floor it the rest of the way home and wake my mom up coming into the house. She asks what is wrong, and I tell her. She just laughs and tells me to go to bed, and I will feel better after some sleep. The next day was Saturday. My family and I all get together for dinner at my grandma's house Saturday afternoons. My grandma can tell I am still not right and asks me what is wrong, so I tell her the story. She sighs and gets an old photo album out, opens it as she tells me the story about how in the 70s, kids would drag race on that strip of road, points out a picture of someone that she says was a cousin of mine, a teenager proudly standing with his car, a '68 Camaro, and tells me that he died running off the edge of the road and into the ditch, and tells me that the swamp is full of spirits for some reason, and to never interact with them. That's my story. I grew up in that swamp and spent many nights out there hunting and camping, but have never gone into the swamp at night alone again since.
Probably not the same, but when I lived in New York, I lived in New Hampshire for a year on an internship with college and spent summer in New York City. I was going out with a girl who wanted nothing more than to be an actor on Broadway. Long story short, we met this guy called Steven. He got my ex a load of auditions, genuinely seemed to think that she was talented and had a shot at making it big. Well, he invited both of us to a networking party where all the big wigs of the theater would be there. She felt really uncomfortable about going, but I thought it would be fun. We go, and it's basically a big party of old men and young girls. We noped the fuck out of there. We broke up a few years ago now. This was 2008. I moved back to the UK and she moved to Germany. She moved to LA last year to give it a go. A few months ago, she moved back to Germany. She hasn't gone into much, but those networking parties were common there. Apparently, they'd promise you more auditions and jobs if you sleep with them. It's really messed up, but you go knowing you're expected to fuck old guys.
I used to know this friend. He was a pretty cool guy for the most part, and I remember picking him up after his job at a retail store to goof around and have fun after a long day. Sometimes we'd go to the pub and play pool till we couldn't stand straight. Those were the times. I must have known him about 8 years in total, and many of those years were the best in my whole life. This one night we decided to change it up. We hadn't exactly gotten bored, but we wanted something new. My friend, I called him Avi as a nickname, suggested the pond. And that didn't seem like such a bad idea, especially in the unforgiving summer heat. We drove out there in my truck and parked in a clearing not too far away. We had a big ice chest and we'd loaded it up with enough beverages and snacks to last the whole night. Although it was probably against legal parameters, law enforcement didn't blink an eye at campfires. Eve got one going and the two of us sat at the water's edge with our feet submerged. I remember it being a really relaxing evening, at least until the end. "Ever hear the one about the turkey man?" he tells me. "Nope, what's that? Sounds like some bullshit a kid wrote for English class." "Nah, dude, I'm surprised you haven't heard of it. I mean, it's not too well known, but I heard it now and then when I was in grade school. See, there's this legend about a guy that worked around the power reactor a couple towns over. They're dealing with all kinds of hazardous chemicals and shit. This one kid had a parent come to the class to talk about where he worked, and the stuff that goes on behind the scenes is some freaky stuff. The accidents especially. He'd stressed that those kinds of things weren't too frequent, but when it did happen, shudders, dude. It'll keep your eyes open after sundown." "So what is it? The turkey guy?" "Yeah, turkey man. Well, apparently he was one of those mishaps, an intern or something. It always varies from person to person, but the one I hear the most is that he was instructed to go into the wrong storage room by a slacking boss. He'd told him the wrong door number, and I guess it just happens that's where some sort of biohazard had contaminated the area. They hadn't secured the room by that point, and he just walked right in. I guess he didn't quite die, though. The radiation chemicals or whatever fucked him up. The doctors and nurses did the best they could, but they assured him he'd probably have countless health problems down the line. He was in urgent care for a couple weeks, then they let him go home. This is the worst part out of all of it, though. You see, the exposure disfigured him pretty bad, but most of all it knocked his brain out of whack. That's what really led to everything." "So how'd he get the name?" "That's just it. Some say he looked like a turkey, a fat, goopy bird without feathers. The drop-in doctor found him missing from his house one day, and a retired cop found him in the lake. He was screaming about the pain, how everything burns. The other kids would always joke that the bird fell in the deep fryer. The thing is, we don't know if he's still around. I mean, I don't really believe the story, but my parents never heard of it. I think it's a fairly new story." "Well, I mean, is that it? Seems pretty typical for that kind of thing. I guess you can imagine what the rest is. Some people say they saw him, and some people blame the kids disappearing on him. Average playground rumor. I'll wager it isn't so much of a fabrication, though." "What do you mean?" "Well, don't you see those news reports all the time, dude? Kids are still disappearing and turning up all over the place. It's been happening for some time, too. You'd think they'd catch they guy, too." "I don't watch the news, dude. That shit's depressing as all hell. The thing that gets me, though, is how they find the bodies. They're always disfigured, stretched and mushed like a piece of putty. That story always stuck with me. It's just the kind of thing you don't forget. It must have been local to my area, because I've never heard it anywhere else. It still brings a shudder even thinking about it. To be honest, I can hardly recall the rest of that evening. I just remember packing everything up and not being able to take my mind off of it. The implications frighten me even more. Even after all these years, the disappearances never stopped, and the distorted remains still crop up a couple times every year.
Hanging out with friend near a creek on our way home from school. Crazy burned-out old hippie suddenly appears. He is wearing short cut-off shorts and no shirt. He is holding a large rock and screaming, "Do you want me to bash your heads in?" Never seen somebody so enraged in my life. He keeps accusing us of harassing some girls. There were never any girls anywhere near there that day. Cops pull up. Apparently he called the cops and told them we were harassing some girls. The cop keeps telling the hippie to drop the rock. Hippie tells the cop he was protecting himself from us. Cops put friend and I in squad car and drive a few blocks away. Lets us out and warns us to stay away from that guy's house. Apparently the hippie had a really bad out-of-body trip a long time ago and beat the living shit out of some young girls. He gets flashbacks about it and thinks other people are attacking girls and tries to save them. Friend and I continue to walk by his house on our way home from school. All the hippie ever does all day is drink Seagram 7 whiskey and watch the news. We start peeking in the window and listening to the news. It is the same news every day. He has recorded the news on an old VHS. It's a report of 3 young women beaten within inches of their lives at a local music festival. The guy literally drank himself into a blackout every day while watching the news report about his violent bad trip. He would often get so drunk he would confuse the VHS with reality, and the first person he would see he assumed was the girl's assailant. We stopped walking by his house after we realized how unhinged the guy was. He was like some kind of benevolent crime fighter in his own deranged mind.
2014. Work as the lone night security guard in a rural state park in upstate New York. Just meant to keep an eye on things, really. Park was always locked up and deserted, as it was late autumn. Worked 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. All the buildings were locked up. Concession stands, water park, park office, maintenance shop, restrooms, pump houses, etc. But the main park entrance had no gate. It was too wide, so it was just left open. Very rarely stragglers would drive in. Typically teeny bops looking for a lover's lane to score at or some lonely dude out for a drive. I would just send them on their way. No big deal. This is rare though, as like I said, it is November and the park is closed for the season. Let me tell you, this place was spoopy at night. No street lights, just my truck's headlights to illuminate the lonely roads, and skeletal autumn trees crowding either side. I took to parking at the marina, empty this late in the year, and just read or fuck around on my phone. It was toward the far end of the park and showed the main road, so from this vantage point I could see any vehicles entering the park. It is late, after midnight at least, and I am sitting in my truck with the heat cranked, looking down at my phone. I happen to look up and holy shit. There is a giant 18-wheeler fucking semi-truck crawling at a snail's pace with its headlights off down the main park road toward the marina. This was so random and unexpected it made me nigh empty my large intestines then and there. Did not even think a truck that big could fit down that narrow road. There is no through traffic in the park, just a dead end past the marina. So there is no reason a trucker should be coming through here. He drives through the marina, headlights still off, and goes to the very back of the far parking lot, right up against the woods. Parks there. I hear the engine turn off. Now it was my job to tell anyone and everyone in the park they needed to leave. But I got a horrible vibe from this big rig. I pulled up to the truck, shined my brights directly on him so he knew I was there, and got out and approached the driver's door. The truck is totally silent now. No lights on in the cab. In fact, the only sound in the entire park at this time was the sound of my little pickup truck's engine. I lift my fist to knock on the driver's door, when I can hear coming from inside just the slightest whimpering. I do not know. I guess it could have been a dog, but to me it almost sounded like a young woman or girl. I wanted to knock. I knew it was my job to tell whoever was in there they had to leave, but I just could not. I was unarmed. All I had on me was a flashlight and my cell phone, and I was getting the worst possible vibes from this truck. I chickened out. I walked back to my truck and sat there and just watched the big rig. I contemplated calling the cops. But I had done it before on trespassers in the park. only for the lazy police to tell me they had better things to do than chase trespassers out of an empty park. I had also gotten bitched at by my supervisor previously for calling the police for anything that was not life or death. Shitty job. I had no real authority. No movement from the truck. No lights. At about 5 a.m. it started up again and crawled back out of the park, lights still off. A few days later, I read in the paper about a 15-year-old girl that had gone missing several days prior. I think nothing of it until I get to the end of the article. She was last reported walking home from her friend's house, who lived next to a truck stop which saw traffic from all over the Northeast. To this day, her whereabouts are still unknown. I want to believe there was no connection.
I was just finishing up my internship at the library. Things were fine here. It was a 4-month program. I was supposed to get my archival and reference credits completed and would be on my way. It was just an English elective. It was a segue into the media studies minor. It was a 4-month program. It was just an internship. Now the police are involved. Mary, the head librarian, has been sick for days now. I'm just a student. I was an apprentice. I was learning. I would be gone in weeks. They couldn't expect me to know all of the ins and outs. She won't answer her phone and her house phone has been disconnected. Of the 7 volunteers and employees, I am the only one here. I do not know what they want, where the records are, what protocols to follow, if there are any privacy checks in place. I am just an intern. I'm a student. It was a 4-month program. I was supposed to be gone, but now state police are threatening me with talks of jail time and the like. They keep talking about the higher-ups getting involved, the feds, the fucking federal government investigating our little library. Something about the Bay. I don't even work here. I'm just an intern. It was a 4-month program. Some people fold under pressure. I always have. I don't know what happened. Mary, the head librarian, before she disappeared, she said that someone used my account to upload some sensitive files to the internet when I was back at school, on campus. It wasn't me. I wasn't here. But someone still leaked delicate files. I don't know what they contained. I don't know what I am doing here. They want to talk to me. I refuse to leave my dorm. They can come and get me if they want. They're so interested in me since someone uploaded files that they didn't want out, since someone blew their cover. Whoever it was, fuck you. Fuck you for all of this trouble. All I have now are cops on my ass and a stupid little tagline on my registrar account from Deptford County Public Library labeled, _vents. Thank you, you fuck. You ruined a college career and potentially a life to spearhead some little information liberation campaign that no one cares about. Thank you. It was only an internship. It was a 4-month program. I was supposed to be gone.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.